And if you missed us, we are back. I'm Jake Ellenbogen. He is Gary Sheffield Jr. This is Yankees Unloaded. And I am glad for the simple fact that Gary and I on social media constantly get, are you guys finished? Is it over? Like, I'm so glad to be back and not worry about it. We're going full time again. Like, things are good. Gary, how the hell are you, my friend? It's been a minute.
I'm good. First of all, I love the t-shirt. And second of all,
thank you.
The last time we were talking Yankees baseball, we were a clean-shaven team, and now we have beards. So I'm actually curious what our audience thinks about that, because I know, Jake, before this was sort of introduced, I think we both agreed that maybe it was a bit silly that we had to be clean-shaven. And I know technically we could have milked an episode about this and stretched it for 3 hours a couple months ago, but
we could have.
I figured we can just address it now. I'm cool with it as long as it's kept. Right? Like as long as you got like a Mookie Betts scruff beard, cool. But I just don't want to see it get crazy, which I don't think it will. So glad to be back. Happy to see some of the names, which I recognize them already in the chat. So let's get this thing rolling.
Hell yeah, man. Well, we're glad to have you guys in here. Always, we love doing this, and we'll continue the same format. I know there were some people, Gary, that were, asking me, like, one, are you guys back? Which we are. But two, are we going to continue doing the live format? And I don't see any reason not to. I think we had a lot of success doing it. I was actually really surprised with the success, and it's not to shoot us any, lightly, but I mean, during an off season, we weren't expected to get over 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 people watching at once. And we're not ignorant to the fact that's also on Twitter, and we've established followings on Twitter as well as YouTube, but still really cool nonetheless. Our goal has never really changed. We want to move people over, not saying you have to leave Twitter forever, but we'd like to move people over onto the YouTube platform. We'll continue to broadcast as such, but we really want to grow this thing. We want to do this. We want to do this full time, like not just full time doing it, but full time, like as a job. So that'll be the best way to do that. And it should be a fun season this year, man. We got a lot to talk about. A lot has transpired since the last time we went live. It was funny. We were talking. I went back and I looked because I couldn't remember what the last episode was. And sure enough, we were talking about getting Alex Bregman. Well, now Alex Bregman he did go to the AL East, just not to the Yankees. And after that, all hell broke loose. The heel injury, the Cole injury, out for the year. Just a lot of different things going on. So, yeah, we're going to get into it. This will be a fat episode because, I mean, when is it not? Gary, you want to go live for 30 minutes? It turns into an hour and 30.
It never is. It seems like with these injuries, and I totally understand you lose Garrett Cole, Luis Gil's out for what we expect to be multiple months now.
Yeah.
You would assume, okay, you lose two guys that you had penciled in your rotation, you're probably in trouble. Well, Jake, you texted me the other day and said, well, thank God we got Max Fried. And I couldn't agree more. And I think he's a little bit better than what people are expecting. I think he's really going to impress some guys. But I will say this Yankees team has always struggled to hit in October. Okay. And I know we have to get there, before it really matters. But the way I look at this, I'm with you. I know before we went live, you were trying to explain to me, and I don't know if you thought I agreed with it or not, but we shouldn't really freak out about this team pitching and how we're going to get outs. We did the exact same thing last year. We said, how is Marcus Stroman going to help us get any outs? And he did a relatively serviceable job. And really, the Yankees dominated on the mound all year last year. And then you get to October baseball, and we really failed in terms of execution defensively and just not being a smart enough baseball team to execute when it mattered. So I don't think these injuries necessarily cause more of an issue as to what we were bad at last year. But I do think some of the signings that we brought this year can help us in ways we were just flat out atrocious. Like, I'm just going to tell you guys, as a Yankees podcaster, I watched a lot of Yankees baseball, and I know our audience did. Jake, I know you did as well. We were not one of the smarter baseball clubs last year. We just weren't. We were a good baseball team. I thought we could hit, we could pitch, we could do all the things that you would like to do. But when it came time to think about the game of baseball and you say, okay, can I cover the base, right? Am I going to go first to third and make the right play? Or am I going to take off to third base on a ball that's right in front of the catcher and make the second out at third base. Just ridiculous mistakes. Some of these signings that the Yankees made in Cody Bellinger, right? Some of these signings will make us way better. Now, losing Juan Soto sucks. It just does. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. You lose a generational talent. Yeah, it's not going to help you. But we're a smarter baseball club, and we should be better defensively. So I want to temper expectations as far as what we're expecting offensively. But as far as pitching, I'm not worried about this club. I think by midseason, we're going to be talking about Matt Blake and the masterclass that we've found a way to put on. I'm not worried about him.
I'm not either, because you just mentioned him, Matt Blake. I mean, this is why the Yankees went out and got him. I'm just surprised he's still there. And I think the reason he's still there is because you've seen all these, managers, these position coaches that go into managing and they're not cut out for it. I think the Mickey Callaway thing really scared away a lot of those potential managers. I do. And we're starting to see more of a push for bench coaches becoming managers, not necessarily pitching coaches or hitting coaches, but actually bench coaches, guys that are the next in line. If a manager gets kicked out of the game, which happens a lot, of course, with Aaron Boone. So look, I think really when you look at just the pitching, right? Max Fried was he was a bonus, but at the same time, he was a need in today's era. I think you have to have 2 to 3 power pitchers, and you need to have him. You need to have Cole and Heel, and then you have Rodon and you have Schmidt. But then, of course, Cole goes down, and we kind of forget the whole. It is funny because we kind of took Max Fried for granted in that. Oh yeah, he's just a 2. He's our 2. He's our power 2. It's going to be so hard to go against this team in the postseason where you have Cole, Fried, and then likely Heel. And we just assumed. And in a 162 game season, you can't really assume anything. And with a guy who already exhibited kind of those, and you had mentioned this to me, had exhibited those feelings like, okay, maybe he didn't have Tommy John last year and he skied it out of the way of that. But we should have known Garrett Cole, that was a ticking time bomb there. I mean, that was not a good start last year. Really only pitched 17 games, which really helped the Yankees. But we didn't really think about what that could mean for the future. And unfortunately, it ends with him seeing Dr. Neil Alatrosh. That's not a name you ever want a player associated with, because he's a great surgeon.
If you see a great surgeon, it's a bad thing.
That's not a good thing. It's like the same thing. Dr. James Andrews. You're like, oh boy, here we go again.
That's the name I thought I was going to see. That is honestly the name I thought I was going to see. But I mean, we also had some injury news from Paul Goldschmidt, which, by the way, because I saw someone asked earlier, what was that news? And Paul Goldschmidt had a sore back. He came out of the game early. And from what Goldie's saying is that he has zero concern whatsoever that he's not going to be ready for opening day. So that's good if you take that at face value. But one thing that we've learned about this organization, you don't really get face value answers. You sort of can't listen to people's answers and just take that as the answer. You almost have to read between the lines and watch the game to see how the injury looked. But I'm going to give Paul Goldschmidt the benefit of the doubt. Obviously, the reporting from Brian Hoke said that we shouldn't have a problem there. And obviously, if you lose a Juan Soto in that offensive production, we need guys like Cody Bellinger and Paul Goldschmidt. We need those guys to be healthy. They have to be on the field. I'm expecting this race to be a lot closer than what it was even last year. This is going to be tough. It just is. So I hope our audience is ready for a dogfight, because it's highly unlikely that we're just going to show up in boat race and watch a 2-man show, right? That's not the build of this roster. We talked all year last year. Oh, we have this super 2, and what are the others doing? Well, now this is the ultimate test offensively. The others have to show up, right? Bellinger has to show up. Jason Dominguez has to make an impact in 2025. It's no longer this project reclamation deal. This is an opportunity for him to get on the field and perform, right? Anthony Volpe took some major steps in the right direction, not necessarily in the regular season the way that a lot of us had hoped, but in October baseball, you started to see some flashes of what we were looking for. That's got to materialize for an entire season. That has to happen. If the Yankees want to go anywhere, a lot of those question marks that we had last year that weren't necessarily answered, they have to be answered right now. And I think that's why I'm so excited for this season. So we'll see how it goes.
No, we'll definitely see how it goes. Initially, when I saw that, I mean, it's the Yankees, so I always assume the worst. That's just the way it is at this point. But he's also 37 years old, so I don't know if you can really take a ton that he's saying, like, full on, because he knows how to work around the media and what to say and what not to say, as opposed to maybe some guys that don't have that proper media training and what have you. But I think when you look at this team, I think Goldschmidt will be fine. Really, if I'm being honest with you, I'm making a joke. My first initial thought was that this is precautionary. It just is. We're getting close to the season. If he has any sort of soreness, why is he playing in what a lot of people would deem meaningless games? When, I had a chance to go to, spring training and see them. They took on the Tigers, and no, Glaber didn't play that day. That was a bummer. But, I see them take on, and immediately there were some things that stood out. It was a new look team, obviously, and not everybody was out there. Judge wasn't out there. Austin Wells wasn't out there, to be fair. But you see Goldschmidt, and how many times early on the season to the foreseeable future did we talk about Juan Soto's approach at the plate? Well, Paul Goldschmidt, albeit a different player, has a similar approach. He's trying to work counts. He's really patient. And I thought you really saw that on full display, especially in person. He just always felt like he was in command. Like, even if he was down, 0-2 in the count, he worked his way back to 3-2, right? Level swing, aggressive, controlled aggression, though, not overly aggressive. I think he's a good fit. And also, I mean, no disrespect to Anthony Rizzo. We like Anthony Rizzo on this channel, but he's an upgrade over Anthony Rizzo, especially Anthony Rizzo of last year, who didn't really give us a ton of production due to the injuries. So I just think Goldschmidt is a net positive just based on what the Yankees are dealing with right now, right? So I think we'll be okay there. And then, Cody Bellinger, watching him, he's fun, man. I think he is going to absolutely rake this year.
You know who he reminds me of?
Who's that?
He actually reminds me a lot when we took that flyer on DJ LeMahieu. Obviously, we're not talking about similar builds in terms of how they play, but it almost seems like every time they come up to the plate, there's action, right? There's a line drive down the line. You're trying to figure out if he's trying to extend a double into a triple. It's fun to watch Cody Bellinger. When he's playing well, in my opinion, based on his start, what you see month number 1 is the Cody Bellinger we're going to get all year. I just think he's going to be a high energy player. I think Yankees fans are going to love him. I really do. And you sort of saw it when the Chicago Cubs took a flyer on him. When he got over to Chicago, he was spectacular. And still, agents didn't think he could repeat that, which is why he didn't get that big time contract. But by the way, Jake, I want to touch on Paul Goldschmidt on something that's very key here, because some people are really worried. Before I get to Kid Reyes super chat, if you're worried about the health of Paul Goldschmidt, I want to read off just a simple number here. And I think these numbers really matter.
Yeah.
In 2021 with the St. Louis Cardinals, you're talking about 158 games played, over 600 at bats. 2022, 151 games played, almost 600 at bats. 154, 154. Okay. As far as I'm concerned, injuries can happen to anybody, regardless. It could be an Iron Man. But I always try and determine what's going to happen in the future based on numbers in his past. What is he doing? What did he do last year? What did he do the year prior? If we get an outlier season where Paul Goldschmidt's unavailable and he plays 90 games, yeah, it's really bad luck, and obviously why Paul Goldschmidt was signed for the dollar amount that he did. But if he can hang on for one more year, to your point, this is a huge upgrade. Anthony Rizzo's not close to the player of Paul Goldschmidt right now, unless he just falls off a cliff and you just pray the cliff is not here now. So as far as I'm concerned of what I saw in spring training so far, I know I'm the biggest spring training stats hater. I cannot stand when people freak out about spring training numbers, but Paul Goldschmidt looks fine. So I'm really looking forward to watching him. Obviously, there were some sexier pickups the Yankees potentially could have made, but I think this is still a good one.
No, I definitely think it is. Plus, in the field, I think he still offers a glove, which I think is necessary. Big target to throw to, all of that, which is very necessary when you have all these young, infielders. But, before we get to Kid Reyes here, who says Stanton is cooked. Time for Everson to pull up. He's talking about Everson Pereira. Also, shout out from, I cannot see that flag.
It is tiny. It is absolutely tiny on the screen, but yeah, sorry about that. But you know what's funny?
We appreciate you, Kid Reyes.
Conversation. Thank you for the 5. We had this exact same conversation this time last year. Do you remember that, Jake? Everyone was saying, what in the world are the Yankees doing? Why don't we DFA this player? Obviously, what you just saw the last 2 years was a player that's hot or cold, right? Which is something that Yankees fans do not enjoy watching. We don't like watching the Luke Voigt style player where they're going to go 0 for 12 in a series, and then the next series they play Washington and they have 6 homers, right? It's fun at the time while it's working, but it seems like in October it doesn't necessarily work out. But then Stanton had a fantastic year, right, in 2024 and shut everybody up. So, but I will agree, when you show up to spring training, you got tennis elbow in both elbows, it doesn't look good.
No, here's my thing, and maybe this is just, I don't know. Maybe this is the wrong way to look at it. I've never looked at Stanton as a player that benefits the Yankees during the season. I don't think Stanton is winning you games. I think Stanton in moments will win you a game or two, right? He comes up in a big spot, has a big hit, whatever. But Stanton's not on the roster for July. He's on the roster for April. He's not on the roster for June. He's not even on the roster for September. He is on the roster for October. And the Yankees are an October baseball team, whether people want to admit it or not. That is the goal. You win in October. And to be honest with you, I don't care what people say in regards to losing Cole and losing Soto and all that. The expectation should be to get back to the World Series. I don't care. I'm not tempering expectations on this team because we've seen teams with less talent do more. And I feel like, Boone getting the contract extension and everything, he's also got to prove himself, I think. And this is a good roster. I will say that, Gary. I understand there are some pieces we'd like them to add or would have liked them to add. Just reevaluate at the deadline. I don't think making a, very reckless decision to trade away one of your farm hands just because of the argument your farm system hasn't quite been on the level of some of the others is smart. Listen, we have people that want the Yankees to trade for Sandy Alcantara, who is coming off Tommy John surgery. And their argument is that he's really good. That's the only argument I've ever got from someone. Well, he's really good and we need pitching. Well, here's what I heard. He's not a Yankee. He succeeded when he wasn't on the Yankees, and I don't care that he has an arm issue. Every pitcher has an arm issue. That is a cop-out. That is a cop-out for 2 reasons. One, it's a cop-out in the fact that you're not actually solving the problem. You're putting a Band-Aid on it because I'm sorry, if you go out and you get, I don't care that he's young, you go out and get another pitcher with arm issues, that's an issue. Number 2, a big cop-out here is that you just don't want to develop talent. And you don't want to have the patience to develop talent. Will Warren is a guy Gary and I threw away immediately. He had a decent look when he came up against the Phillies. And then he had that 1 inning where he gave up those runs in his first appearance. And then we're just like, yeah, we don't want to see Will Warren again.
Very unfun to watch during the season.
But to be fair to Will Warren and us, by the way, the Yankees were win now, need to win a World Series. Will Warren was not, the timeline didn't make any sense. He had a bad ERA in AAA. There was no reason for him to be up, right? I think that's fair. Wouldn't you say so, Gary? The numbers
I would say so.
Really backed up that he shouldn't have been there.
Right.
However, spring training, and I know you just said you don't like the stats, but even you admit, spring training, he is pitching very well. And the thing is, it's not just that he's pitching better. It's that he's clearly worked on some things and he's changed his approach. And he's worked with the holy grail of pitching coaches in Matt Blake, who we're going to continue to mention throughout the year because he is a stroke of genius. Matt Blake is doing his thing once again with Will Warren. No different than Michael King, no different than the bullpen arms, no different than, I mean, any of these guys, Nestor Cortez. How about Carlos Rodon, who looked completely dead in the water? People wanted to get rid of him. I thought last year he had a pretty good turnaround, all things considered. How about Marcus Stroman? We were just talking about that. He had a really good first half of the season. And by the way, he's back. So there's not going to be trading Marcus Stroman because now they need him. So this is my thing. I'm not saying Will Warren is going to be some special talent because I don't think that's what he's going to be. I think he's going to be a good 4. That's his ceiling, and I'm okay with that. Will Warren is not a bad pitcher. He's a young pitcher with hardly any experience, and now he got a little experience last year. And in the spring training that people want to deem as useless and doesn't provide any results, well, the reality of the situation is you told me that last year with Luis Heel, with Clark Schmidt. And you're like, you know what? I don't care that the kids are pitching well. Gary, isn't it funny how we literally went down the same road to start our season last year where you and I were talking, and there were a lot of people that wanted Blake Snell, and we're like, nope, trusting in the kids, trusting in Luis Heel. Let's see what he does because you can always add on later on the year. And if you're so high on your farm system, then, well, you should have enough value to go out and get anybody you want at the deadline. So that's how I look at it, Gary. I think right now they got to roll with what they have. And to be honest with you, this is a hot take. I think that might be better than last year in a different way because I think they're more well-rounded. And I can criticize them and say I didn't love getting rid of Gleyber Torres because I felt like they were just trying to send a message, or rather Brian Cashman was. But the reality is if they're a better defensive team, they don't have to score as many runs, And that's how I look at it.
Yeah, we definitely knew the Yankees were punting on the Gleyber Torres. You signed Max Fried, right? Marcus Stroman's still on this roster. I know they tried to trade him back in January. It didn't happen. He's still on this roster. So ground balls are going to occur. You have got to be better defensively. Has to happen. Okay. So when I look at this team, you say, okay, what method are the Yankees going with to win games? And I don't know if I love it, but this is the method that they're going with. You look at Devin Williams, you look at Luke Weaver, and you can see very clearly the build that's happening before our eyes is similar to what you saw out of the Betances, the Chapmans. Obviously, those are bigger, more sexy names, veterans. We understand that. But when you look at this bullpen, they're very clearly trying to shorten games. They're very clearly trying to get more fundamental. And I think you can accomplish the gist of getting much better in one area of baseball and getting much worse in another, right? In terms of slugging, this team's not going to slug to the same capacity they did last year. It's just not going to happen. There won't be a player on this roster that hits 45 homers, okay, outside of Aaron Judge. In my opinion, it's not going to happen, especially with Giancarlo Stanton sidelined. So having said that, the Yankees need to be elite in these other areas of baseball. And you don't make these type of signings in a Max Fried to put the ball on the ground if you're not expecting to be much better defensively. So that's where I'm at with this. Obviously, Baltimore didn't do a ton. I think that's another aspect of this that people aren't necessarily talking about on TV, is that some of these other teams haven't really wowed us with their moves either. Okay. The Los Angeles Dodgers made a ton of pickups despite beating us in the World Series, and we looked silly. But you look at the American League East, I thought Boston got a lot better, but I'm not in love with Baltimore. I'm really not. Toronto, even worse, right? I'm not in love with those teams. So the Yankees still, considering what we lost, should be much better than those teams. And I think the biggest contender this year is going to be Boston.
Absolutely.
I've said this. I said it last year.
I'm
saying it again this year. You were 500 last year. Half of us couldn't even name who their 3 through 5 starters even were. Okay. They were just reclamation project after reclamation project. No one had a clue who was going to get it out, where. They didn't know who was going to pitch the 7th, 8th inning. They had no idea. This year they do, right? You make big trades, getting guys out of Chicago, good riddance. But When you're talking about Garrett Crochet, this is a big time arm, right? Boston is going to hit. They just will. You bring in a Bregman. That's what we need to be concerned about, is how much better did our competition get in comparison to how much worse or better did we get? And as far as I'm concerned, and I don't know, again, if I love this, we probably aren't eyeballing a World Series coming into 2025. Like, I wouldn't look at this roster and say, okay, Boone's got to cash in with this roster. No, but I think in general, expectations, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, I'm going to read the chat, especially tonight after the show, as to what people think this roster is going to do. I'm sure some people are going to be like, we're going to win 75 games. Okay. But there are also going to be people who think, I think we're a wild card, sort of a bubble team, no chance whatsoever of winning a World Series. I think we're much closer than what people are going to expect. But of course, that's not what I'm after, right? And to your point, we get to a deadline. Maybe there's a position player out there. I know Kyle Tucker was just available. Maybe there's another guy available for this Yankees roster to get much better, man, offensively. So that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, you never know who's going to be available. We've learned that. I didn't think a 26-year-old or 25 at the time year-old Jazz Chisholm would be available. And then all of a sudden, they're trying to trade him. Like, they're not even – he's got 2 years of control, and they're looking to trade him away, which, by the way, I think they're going to bring him back long-term. But that's neither here nor there. Boston, let's talk about them. I got their lineup right here. Projected lineup, Gary. Jarren Duran, you and I really like him. Really good baseball player. He's going to lead off. Rafael Devers is a Yankee marauder, killer, like Merker, drops a nuke. He absolutely destroys the Yankees. Alex Bregman is also one of those guys, although he doesn't hit well at Yankee stadiums. That's interesting. Tristan Casas at first base. He had some injuries last year. A lot of people forget that. That hurt them. Trevor Story, speaking of injuries, I don't know how healthy he's going to be throughout the year, but they have Trevor Story. Will Abreu had a good year last year. Connor Wong also had a really good last year. I'm not aware of Christian Campbell or Sedan Rafaela. No, I know who Rafaela is. He's just a solid player. The rotation is Garrett Crochet, Tanner Houck, Walker Buehler, Richard Fitz, and Quinn Priester, which I think is a huge upgrade from last year. They had injuries, of course, with Giolito and Cutter Crawford and Brian Bello. So this is the direction they're going in. So that is the Red Sox. I think they are the second best team this year in the AL. I've just said the AL, not even the AL East. I think they're going to be a really tough team. And so I don't know. It's weird to me, Gary. I'm used to the AL being the superior, the league or whatever.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't feel that way anymore. It feels like the AL they get their guys. Some of them, they'll have a couple guys in free agency they really want. Sometimes it makes no sense at all. But I think, like, you look at the Orioles, they're going to look back on this and think, wow, we really just didn't get it. Because I think the Orioles, I have a theory that they are so focused on getting those competitive balance picks because if they spend money, they don't get them. And that's been kind of their DNA. That's been their formula. I think they are refraining from paying guys in free agency because of the picks. I think that is how they do things. And I think trust me, because I know how you feel on that. I feel the same way. I think it is a huge mistake on their part. I think they are leaving the door wide open, whereas the Yankees could get run over easily by the Orioles if they actually put in the effort that I thought they were going to put in this offseason.
Did you see anyone in the chat? But by the way, because obviously our chat's busy at this point, and we're now heading into year 2. Did you see anyone talking about what the Yankees should do with their 3rd round pick that they earned for 2026 that they got for losing Juan Soto? Did you see anyone talking about that?
I didn't see that.
Yeah, see, that's sort of where ownership and management should be on.
You would think
receiving picks because you lost a superstar player. You should never be worried about that ever, because what we've learned is that teams like the Dodgers, I think the Dodgers can be used as a perfect example, is that some businesses you can just pump money in and then you're going to get your reward later. It might not be right this second, but you're sure going to see that money on the back end. That's what we're after. Okay. But side note here for the New York Yankees, I know that the topic of conversation is bats, and people want to know who's going where, why, and all types of stuff. Jason Dominguez, key names, right? How good are these players going to be? I mentioned Volpe earlier, but Jake, the player in my mind, and I know you're going to love this, which is why I bring it up. I think Oswaldo Cabrera needs to take a major step forward.
Yeah.
And I think that responsibility is entirely on Aaron Boone. You give him an extension, he has to make the right choice with this player. Obviously, you cannot look like a star player when you go out and play excellent for 3 weeks straight, and then they say, hey, DJ LeMahieu, this aging player who hasn't been great since the COVID season, he's just going to walk onto the field ahead of you. Now, Cabrera's a young guy. He wears number 95 for a reason. He's young, okay? He was born in 99. So I want people to understand what that does to young players when a veteran who hasn't performed well in 4 seasons, now going on 5, can just walk right in front of you in terms of role. You need to give this guy an opportunity to show what he can do. And as far as I'm concerned, I've watched a lot of him now. I believe he can be much better than the player that you saw in 2024. And some of the bright spots that you saw, I think he can do that much more consistently with this roster if they let him play. But I'm not going to tell you guys that I expect him to play, because we've seen, and this can change, because remember, in 2024, we have always complained that Aaron Boone would pull guys too early, does not give his starters an opportunity to go deeper into games. In 2024, he made a major improvement, especially early on without Garrett Cole. But Cabrera, give him an opportunity, and if he sinks, he sinks. But you cannot allow him to show up on the field, take 4 at-bats every single day for 3 weeks, and then sit him on the bench for veteran players that are highly paid and not performing.
No, my God, I totally agree. I'm at the point, Gary, where, shit or get off the pot when it comes to DJ LeMahieu. Like, I think it's time to just put your foot in the dirt. If you're actually serious about playing him, then fine, play him. But wait a minute, isn't he injured? Exactly. He's always injured. It's time to just cut bait. They're in a little bit of a predicament a lot of people don't know about. Peraza does not have any more options left. So if you do choose to send him down, he has to clear waivers. That's not happening. He is not going to clear waivers. You will lose him. Peraza, I saw in person, Gary, because I remember I was at the Yankees Mets game, Rodon's first year, texting you. And you're like, I can't stand the way Peraza plays the field. Like, he is the worst defender I've ever seen. That's what you texted.
Is that what I said?
Yes. You were hard on him. He was playing short, I think, at that point. Dude, when I was and I understand it's one game, but when I was in spring training, when I was watching him at third, he was so impressive, man. He made play after play, great range, the reaction. I actually really like him at third, and I like him there more than Cabrera, but Cabrera has a better bat. So I would prefer Cabrera plays. You have Peraza back him up. You DFA LeMahieu because he should not make this roster. And Stanton is going to be out for a while, so you need a DH. Well, that DH could be, as forementioned, it was talked about with Everson Pereira. He's having a good camp. Then you also have Ben Rice, who every time I turn around, he's hitting the ball at 115 mile an hour exit velocity, which I've never seen from him. So that's the thing. I don't actually, and I know this is a really hot topic and a hot take. I don't think the Yankees need another bat or arm. I think they need to just let this thing play out the way it will and then reevaluate at the deadline. And
so
you
you're
could also
prioritizing young players to
because
sort of get a feel.
I'm impressed. I'm impressed. Ben Rice went to work. He didn't just look at, I stopped playing. The coach made a bad decision. I was better than Rizzo. No. You know that whole meme? Oh, he took that personally? Yeah. Ben Rice clearly took that personally, added 10 pounds of muscle, is now hitting the ball harder than any time at any point he's ever hit the ball. I think it was an average of like 86 to 89 exit velocity. He's hitting it 116, 118. I mean, this is what we're talking about. This is a guy, I understand it's spring training, but these measurables, they translate. You don't just hit the ball 160 miles an hour and be like, yeah, it was just spring training. Well, guys in spring training could still throw 98. It's not like,
yeah, that's the premise of why we made some signings that we've made over the years as well. Because you have to remember, when you mentioned DJ LeMahieu, at one point, he was the best thing that ever happened to the Yankees. In 2019, he hit 327. Okay. Immediately, it made Brian Cashman look like a genius. And why did they make the trade? Well, DJ LeMahieu's exit velocity, because you wanted to bring that up, was spectacular. But you know what was atrocious? His launch angle. And I hate the idea of launch angle and talking about percentages and numbers. And I just think it's boring. It's a boring way to consume baseball, which is why I don't harp on it too much. Yeah. But yeah, when someone hits the ball really hard and it's predominantly on the ground, like rolling on the ground, yeah, good things can happen, but you can do a lot more damage if the ball is at least a line driver in the air. So that's what the Yankees commit to. So that's where I'm at. And when you mentioned that DJ LeMahieu shouldn't be playing in front of a Peraza or a Cabrera, I mean, I completely agree. But when I try and look at the style of a player or what they're good at and what they're trying to achieve in their role, I say, okay, what is DJ LeMahieu's role in 2025? And not what do I think he'll be good at, but what is he attempting to do? I would describe it as he's going to try to be versatile defensively, which, I mean, I don't feel like he's a great defender at any position that he possibly could be at right now. I don't think
not anymore. No.
Yeah, I don't think he would be great defensively at third base. I don't feel that at first base he provides more range or anything that Paul Goldschmidt wouldn't provide. Right, second base, of course, Jazz Chisholm, I wouldn't put him over there either. So then you say, okay, well, he's not a power bat clearly, but you could describe him as a contact bat. I think that's fair. You hit in back-to-back seasons, you hit 327 and 364, you win a batting title. Yeah, that's a contact player. Well, you haven't hit over 270 in 4 seasons. So if Luis Arias was hitting 260 for the next 5 seasons, we would never talk about him again. Is that fair to say? And we are now in that position. We are talking about a player offensively where his main objective is to be a contact bat absent of power. And now he no longer hits for contact, and he's not available enough to be versatile enough defensively. So yeah, it seems like they're going to continue to kick up water here and try and find ways to get their value from DJ LeMahieu. We're going to watch it. We're going to consume it, and we're going to offer our opinions about it. But we just hope that it's not an extended stay, because it's not going to help the Yankees win baseball games in 2025. I think that's the clearest way you can possibly say it, is that we need to give these young players an opportunity. And sometimes if you bring a veteran that you're trying to get an output from, it could really damage your organization long-term by not giving a Peraza an opportunity to play, by not giving Cabrera a longer leash to play. And some people feel that, and I saw in the chat earlier, that Cabrera maybe isn't as good as I'm saying he could be. That's absolutely possible, but you can't find out if you're continuing to squeeze out a player who we know hasn't performed well in 4 seasons.
I love the way you put that. A name I hear a lot is Luis Rengifo, and he can run, he can hit, and he doesn't strike out a lot, but he doesn't walk a lot. He's not a good defender. He's a -5 defender on Savant. Like, what if I told you that, and again, this isn't just Yankee fans, this isn't just these people, it's sports in general. Just because there's another guy that might be marginally better statistically on another team doesn't mean you need to go and acquire him. Doesn't mean that you don't already have that guy on the roster. He's just not getting those opportunities. And that's how I look at it with Rengifo. These, people are saying, well, they need another bat, and Rengifo's clearly one of those guys. How? I'd rather give Peraza an opportunity. I'd rather give Pereira an opportunity. Like, this guy's not a great defender. And you just told me that you cared about defense. That's why you wouldn't bring back Glaber, who was a top 3 leadoff hitter in baseball in the most important months of the entire year, right? That's what you just told me. So now you're going to, well, the exception to the rule is that we just realized that we didn't do enough during the offseason. So now we're going to break our own rule and get another bat and say we don't care about defense. That's not how that works. So my thing is, I actually do believe the Yankees are going to stand pat here. I don't think they're going to make a move. I know there's some people that was saying, oh, well, JD Martinez. No, because I think the Yankees understand that if they get JD Martinez as their DH, there's not enough room to keep a lot of these young guys. And some of these guys are running out of service time. Like you're talking about, like there's no more options for a Peraza, right? There's no more options for Cabrera. You can't just have them miss the team and be like, oh, let's put them in, AAA, And like I see, like Wayne saying, you say opportunities, that's both have had their chances. I disagree. Peraza's only hit well when he was in the big leagues, and he doesn't get opportunities. This is his chance to actually get an opportunity. Gary, I'm actually surprised Peraza's still on the team. Like I thought this guy would have been thrown into a deal a while ago because they told us how they felt.
Yeah, Jake, it almost feels like it's like going out to learn driving. Like when I first started learning to drive, my mom threw me in the driver's seat and she's sitting in the passenger. I think she was in the car with me for about 45 seconds. And if you asked her, because I scared the piss out of her, she said, yeah, we're never doing that again. Right. She gave me an opportunity to show what I could do. And very clearly I didn't do it well. Well, if you only get so much opportunity to show what you can do, I think all of us to some degree have been in a position in our lives where our attempt to make a good impression wasn't long enough and we didn't feel comfortable showing what we can do. And then we created this version of ourselves that was not what you wanted. I think this is one of those opportunities. So yeah, the Yankees are in a predicament because right now, Aaron Judge is 32 years old. April 26th, he will be 33. And so when your best player is getting up there in age, he's not old, he's still 32. We get that. But it creates a lot of pressure when you want to find out what a young player can do. You almost feel like, well, what if we spend half the season getting small production out of these young players and it costs us a playoff spot or even a wild card spot that may have turned into a World Series championship? So that's where the Yankees are. These are all tough decisions. This is why veteran players play instead of young players, because veteran players usually understand their role and understand exactly, they're easier to predict. As you go into the season, we have no idea what Cabrera is going to do. Cabrera could hit 260 with 29 homers, or he could hit 232, right? This is why everyone says, why are these teams, why did the Yankees 20 years ago always sign 35-year-olds? Well, because they thought they could better predict their output. That's why, because they had quality seasons before. But some of these guys, when we list them, you see them in the chat, we say them on this podcast, well, we are somewhat making guesses based on the way a player looks. And we're trying to project how that'll translate into the season. And we hope it's well. We do. And the Yankees at some point are going to have to show, yeah, we know how to develop players too, right? Austin Wells, he made a huge step forward in 2024. Yeah, that step has to be even higher in 2025 if this team wants a chance to win when it matters. So that's what I'm looking forward to. I think this season, if you thought last year was a major test for Aaron Boone and what he did in terms of pulling strings, when you lose Garrett Cole, not just for a couple months and you have to put a Band-Aid on it, but when you lose him and it's definitive the entire season, he may not even be ready for opening day next year. Now is when you're going to see what type of manager Aaron Boone is. And for those of you who think he's not great, well, that is really going to show itself in 2025. And obviously that can go the other way as well.
Yeah, and I think when you look at Clark Schmidt and Luis Heel last year, like again, it was we don't know how good they really are. We should go out and get a vet. We should go out and get Snell. We should trade for somebody. And it's kind of like, I mean, we could literally, have the analogy of Yankees Unloaded. I mean, think about this. When we first started, we had 1.9K views on our first video, and our second video we had like 300 views. And if Gary and I looked at that and instantly were like, oh, I guess we're not cut out for this, it's over, we only had 300 views, we lost 1,600 views from the previous video, then we wouldn't be going, right? We wouldn't know the potential of, continuing this show. We wouldn't probably know most of these people. That's just the reality of it. So I understand both sides where you don't want, because of how delicate a 162 game season is, you don't want to just act like, oh yeah, it's a couple games. That could be the decision between winning, your division, not winning, making the playoffs, not making the playoffs. So I'm not saying that, but at the same time, you don't know until you try. And it's the same thing with Aaron Judge. Like, if they never called up Judge, if they, even tried to be a little bit nitpicky, who knows? Maybe that never works out. Same thing with like guys like Jeter. If they trade away Jeter, I always bring this up because George Steinbrenner he tried to trade away the core four multiple times. I mean, like, everybody knows that was out there. Could you imagine if they actually executed those trades? Do you think they win as many World Series? I don't think they win as many without guys like that. So I think really the point here is not to say that the core four in New York is Pereira, Cabrera, Peraza, and Will Warren.
I thank God you said that, because you already know.
Yeah,
I would have woken up tomorrow. I would have woken up in the middle of the night and gotten a notification on my phone of someone saying, "Geez, Jake doesn't know ball at all. He thinks that Cabrera is going to be the next Posada." No, but it's
you do this long enough, and
yeah, it's the idea that, okay, we maybe aren't as impressed as we'd like to be with the talent. Why don't we just cash in our chips now and then be happier about the roster that we see? But more goes into it than that. There's a reward for putting a young player on the field and then him actually producing. It's not just the production itself, but it's also how cheap it is, right? Going with Anthony Volpe, perfect example. Anthony Volpe was the cheap decision, right? And I'm not saying cheap as in like cheapskate, but if you look at how much money he makes, he's not making what Carlos Correa makes, okay? He's not making what Corey Seager makes. Now, if he does give you an output and he turns into even better player in 2025 and he even gets close to all-star level, well, now you're getting all-star production out of a player who's making $800K. And now that money can be reallocated somewhere else for a roster that we now know it's confirmed. Okay. You can put a stamp on it. The New York Yankees, an $8 billion organization, operates on a payroll, and not just like the payroll, like how much money are we spending, but they actually put a cap on themselves of how much money they're willing to spend. It's clear as day. So having said that, you guys all should be rooting for as many young players to work out as possible. Reason being, when you see a Kyle Tucker or a Vladimir Guerrero Jr. in free agency, if you want to know what it's going to take for the Yankees to go win those bids, they're going to have to start hitting on some of these young players. Like, it's going to happen. So, Jake, I know that's the reason why you love prospects, and I think a lot of other people can resonate with that as well. I'm obviously not of that nature, but I'm somewhere in the middle. You got to show, right, that Peraza and Cabrera, one of them's got to really work out and get some real run for you.
I will say, Gary, you did turn me into somebody who's more open to trading away prospects. I just think, like, can we have a serious conversation about George Lombard Jr.? I think he is going to be better than Anthony Volpe. I think the Yankees are going to be in a predicament where Lombard Jr. is a better shortstop. He's a better hitter, both as a pure hitter, contact hitter, and a power hitter than Anthony Volpe. And I think that this like age of coddling prospects, I'm so over it, because you're watching him and he's hitting big league pitching, but he's scorching big league pitching. And you see him the way he's so quick to turn on it. He's aggressive, but he's smart, has good approach at the plate. He just, like, I definitely see, remember we were early on this when I said that, there was a thought process that the Yankees, I forget who reported this. There was a thought process that the Yankees were actually higher on Lombard Jr. than Arias, despite Arias being ranked higher in all of those prospect rankings. And the Yankees felt higher on Lombard. And look,
what's fair? They said they were high on Durbin, and he was traded 3 days later, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Jack Curry, quite literally. I mean, it's just me reading what was reported.
Yeah.
Is saying, I would bet my money that Durbin is going to be your starting second baseman. 2 days later, he was traded. So to your point, yeah, I mean, based on what we're seeing, George Lombard Jr. is the real deal. Now, that obviously can fail to materialize, and he's still got to prove himself. But I did see that people were just freaking out on Instagram, freaking out that he wasn't going to make the opening day roster. And I don't know how you feel about this. I don't know how our chat feels. This is our first episode really breaking into 2025.
Yeah.
And some people say, well, I mean, he's 19 years old and you lose Soto. You got to figure out where the talent's coming from on this roster. Some people just wanted him to break into the roster opening day. Obviously, I haven't given my opinion on it yet, but Jake, how'd you feel about that?
I get both sides. I get not wanting to rush him, but I also understand that this day and age, I think there is too much protection of these prospects. And I know kind of where I think your mind is going to be at on this. It's not necessarily that they don't think they're capable. I think it has a lot more to do when an organization is cheap and imposes their own cap. That same organization will manipulate service time. And I think that's really all this is. I'm not saying that he's 100% ready to go, but I also want to say this. The bar's been set so low, and this is what I said all of 2024, when it comes to batting average. Like, we've had guys in the lineup hitting 190. So you want to tell me Lombard Jr. couldn't hit at least 191? Like, that's kind of my thing. It does affect
their value, though. I don't think the Yankees don't believe Lombard can replace the value that they're going to get.
No, I agree with that.
If Lombard is called up, let me ask you this question. How valuable today, if Anthony Volpe was on the trade block, would he net some of the best talent in Major League Baseball? Like, for example, if Vladimir Guerrero Jr. was available and he was, let's just say he had 4 years of control, right? They would say, well, we want your team's best prospects. We want the best thing that Major League Baseball has to offer. Would Anthony Volpe in a package today, would that net the team, superstar talent? In my estimation, he wouldn't. My feeling is that even though the Yankees gave him an opportunity, and I think Volpe's still a solid player in this league, like I really do, and I think he can get a lot better, but Anthony Volpe, the way we viewed him before he ever scratched Major League Baseball, we looked at him as being a notch down from Jeter, right? But he's going to be a perennial all-star and the next face of the Yankees, and basically this guy who would be below Judge, but still a great player. I don't turn on Yankees baseball and say, oh yeah, people are traveling to go see this player. He should be protected from trades. No, I think all of us now sort of look at him as lesser, even though he's productive. So I guess my point here, Lombard Jr., absolutely, if he was your third baseman, let's just say midway through this year, I think in terms of production, he would hold his own. I think he'd be fine. Even though he's 19, we've seen younger players. Like we've seen Bryce Harper come up at 18. We saw Juan Soto come up at 19. Guys can do this. But once you pull them up and they go hit 212 for 2-3 months, yeah, you have a harder time creating value later on in the trade market.
And what you also see, and I think guys are going to be trying to do what Soto did, you get up at 19, well, now you have a chance to be a free agent at 25. Now you have a chance to get that crazy money that, I don't think there's any doubt that Aaron Judge is a much better baseball player than Juan Soto, and so is Ohtani. But Soto has that, I'm 25 years old, and I'm already up there. So I could get better, but I'm also 25, so I give you a ton of control. And long term, like, that matters. So, I mean, Jeter, when he was a rookie and he played 15 games, he was 21 years old. So I do want to give the Yankees a little bit of a break there. It's not like Jeter came up when he was 17. Like, I've seen a lot of that. There's a lot of revisionist history, but it's also incorrect history. Like, Jeter
he was 21 when he came up?
Yeah, 1995.
Oh, they made it seem like he got his permit to drive and then he played the next week.
No,
that's the way they make it seem.
That's why I wanted to bring that up. I think Jeter is always the guy that's brought up. Whereas I think it's Alex Rodriguez. I'll check right now. I think Alex Rodriguez, yeah, he came up at 18, played 17 games, and he played 48 games in 95 when he was 19. So I think a lot of these people are thinking about A-Rod. It's not Jeter. He didn't start. He actually didn't have his true rookie year until he was 22, like Volpe. So that's fair. But at the same time, I do feel like they coddle these prospects. And I will say this, there's no way to know for sure. Are we absolutely sure Derek Jeter was astronomically a better prospect than George Lombard Jr.? Do we know that for sure? The one thing I know is that Juan Soto was a better prospect than Derek Jeter. The one thing I know is that Bryce Harper was a better prospect than Derek Jeter. But I don't know for absolute sure that George Lombard Jr. is not, because he was drafted in the first round. He wasn't drafted 6th overall, but he's drafted in the first round, you know? And so that's my thing. And I'm not talking about how Jeter ended up being. I'm not talking about 3,000 hits. I'm not talking about Hall of Famer. I'm talking about actual prospect. It's easy for us to say, well, Derek Jeter is a Hall of Famer. Yes. But was Derek Jeter, I would love to know, like if God himself could come down from the heavens and let me know who's the better prospect, I would love to know that, because we don't know. It's covered completely different now than it was back in the day. See, Derek Jeter was drafted 6th overall. Lombard Jr. was drafted in the 20s. But what does that have to do with, how different? Is there really a difference? Gary, that's what I would be interested to know, because there's no way for us to know for sure. And I think really the only one that could give us an idea are scouts that scouted back then and scouted now. Those are the only ones that I would really trust to answer this question. But don't you find it fascinating? This is something that's never brought up, but it really does. I think it warrants a discussion. Derek Jeter 6th overall, or Lombard Jr., I think it was 26th overall. What is that like? Good example, right? I'm hearing from a lot of NFL draft insiders and whatnot. This draft, if you get a guy at 15, right? It's as good as getting a guy at 60 in this draft, right? So it's showing you the difference between some other drafts where you get a guy at 15 and, the guy that gets drafted at 60 is like the 120th best player. But in terms of this, in terms of baseball, in terms of their draft, what was Derek Jeter's 6th overall pick like compared to when Lombard Jr. was drafted in the 20s? So I think that's really the interesting thing, is that there's not really a way for us to know. Is it despite all of the technological advancement, despite all the analytics, despite everything we know and how these guys can take better care of themselves, are we really sure that Derek Jeter as a prospect was that much better than any first round pick?
Well,
that's what I don't know.
So Jeter was given, you have to remember, there was a ton of pressure for him to show up and be what they were talking about. But you also have to remember that Derek at one point, I'm just speaking defensively, was failing. Okay. He was failing at shortstop. And he would say this, right? At one point in his development. And they had a decision. The Yankees had a long conversations, numerous, about, is he going to last at shortstop? And Derek Jeter is not small. He's not 5'11". He's not the size of Anthony Volpe. He is 6'3". Okay. There were a ton of conversations about whether or not we just move him positions. And obviously we had the same conversation when Alex Rodriguez came in 2004. And when you have that conversation, you say, okay, well, A-Rod's probably the better player, but he still stayed at shortstop. The Yankees made a decision that this player, we're going to see it through, thick or thin. We are going to see this through, and it ended up working out. That's how it was. So as far as I'm concerned, this is part of the reason why I personally don't like comparing prospect with the fully baked cake that's already out the oven. Derek Jeter's played 20 plus years in the big leagues. He's retired. He's hanging out somewhere in Tampa right now. Okay. George Lombard Jr. is 19 years old. He was just sent back down to minor league camp, and this guy, he may or may not pan out. He hasn't done anything in Major League Baseball. Right. So as far as I'm concerned, it's very difficult to compare these players.
Absolutely.
Because you have to remember, there are a lot of people who are going to hear you say Jeter, and they're going to hear you say George Lombard Jr., and they're going to say, wow, are we really comparing the player with 3,300 hits versus the guy who has 0? And so obviously it's a tough conversation to even try and introduce, but
you see where I was going with it though, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
And the Yankees, to some degree, they're on a time crunch right now. Okay. This is sort of what I was trying to introduce earlier. Their best player is going to be 33. Okay. Very soon. The Yankees have to get great, as you would like to put it, Jake, get good very quickly.
Good.
They need to be on the big stage. We took 15 years to get there this last time. It needs to be much sooner now. And putting young players on the field that you don't necessarily know, or putting young players on the field early, like a Lombard Jr., which was the main question here, if it doesn't work out right away, that doesn't do anything to help you in 2025. It makes things much worse. Okay. So yeah, that's where I'm at with it. I think the Yankees right now need to put a ton of weight on the young players that played last year. Those young players that you saw on the field last year, Wells, we talked for half our podcast. I'm surprised I have any hair left complaining about getting Wells on the field more often, right? We were talking about a full platoon. And we had a manager who was talking about keeping guys fresh. It wasn't about platooning. It very clearly was a platoon. Okay. We need to get guys bigger roles. And then when you give a guy a bigger role and he doesn't do anything with it, it becomes much more black and white as to the decisions that you need to make long-term to get better. But the Yankees sort of play a bunch of guys part-time. You don't really know what a guy really is. So I want to find that out very quickly. But of course, if George Lombard Jr. starts to show out, I think third base in general, there's no big name over at third base. That position can be won quite easily. And I hope that he does that very, very soon.
Yeah, it's just interesting, the shift, because he was a guy that was kind of getting underrated. People actually forgot the Yankees drafted him. It's so funny how many people were asking, where the hell did he come from? Where does Lombard Jr. kid come from? It's like, oh yeah, they drafted him like 2 years ago. But now he's the number 2 guy in their farm system, which really should be number 1. I'm so tired of calling Jason Dominguez a prospect. He is not a prospect. That said, and I will get to Jason Dominguez in a sec, because again, we did say we had a lot to talk about. But you mentioned Austin Wells. It's funny, I was going to bring this up, and this is going to sound so disrespectful, but I call them complaints. When we would have to roll the dice, it would actually be something we prepared for, because 3 hours before whether it's 7 or 10, or God forbid they play at 1. I hate when they play at 1, but we get it 3 hours before we get their lineup card, as you know. And I can't even tell you how many times Gary and I have sent the lineup card to each other and we've talked about it. But doesn't it feel like, regardless how you feel this year, like excitement last year having Juan Soto, right? That was the big exciting point, going out and getting Jazz Chisholm. Felt like a different Yankees team. The excitement this year to me is none of those, because I don't think LeMahieu's going to play. I don't. No LeMahieu, no Trevino. It's like Austin Wells is going to be in the lineup every freaking time. And when he's not, it's going to be JC Escarra, who I also really like, because I watched him in camp and I was really blown away. He's got some power. He's got an arm. I think he is a great backup catcher to have. And they clearly like him because they traded away Narvaez, okay, who I'm almost positive he might have made the first round. I could be wrong on this. He might have made the first round playoff roster. But anyway, at any event, they trade away Narvaez. They trade away Trevino. They trade away Agustin Ramirez to go out and get Jazz. Escarra has been their handpicked guy from the moment this whole thing. No one realized it, but they had always had their eye on him, and they told us that. And now he's the backup to Wells, meaning when Wells doesn't play, it's still going to be fun to watch JC Escarra behind the plate. That's what gets me the most excited, because you have guys like Wells that are going to play every day, and then when he doesn't, you're going to have Escarra behind the plate. You know, you have Cody Bellinger, you have Jazz, you have Paul Goldschmidt, you have Judge, you have Jason Dominguez, Ben Rice, Anthony Volpe, Cabrera, right? But then you also have Pereira, Peraza. Dom Smith has hit really well in camp. Does he make the team? You have Grisham defensively. I mean, Grisham is, I don't want to be that guy, but he's probably that guy this year where you're going to see him in the lineup be like, but he has a role though, as Gary has said multiple times, he is a defensive guy. It's going to be really interesting to see how they use the DH though, Gary, because you could argue Ben Rice throughout camp has earned that DH role. He's also played some catchers, so he gives them some flexibility there. He's not
Where
a
else
great
has Ben
catcher,
Rice
though.
played though in the minor leagues? Just total. Because he's played a little bit of outfield, correct?
No, he's just a catcher, first base DH.
Because my thing is, Jason Dominguez is downright at this point today. Okay.
Yeah.
This very well could change. I mean, there aren't a ton of players in baseball. Where
I did say we'd get to that.
Yeah, he is. There aren't a ton of players in the history of this game where I was like, he is objectively terrible at whatever that is, right? In baseball, whatever aspect of the game. And then suddenly it became like highly serviceable. I think in like the NBA, Jason Kidd was an atrocious shooter of the basketball, but he could pass incredibly well. And then later in his career, he was like a spot up shooter that stood in the corner making threes, right? So this can happen, but Jason Dominguez is not good defensively. And not only is he not good defensively, and again, I left out room that this could improve, and I hope it does, but Jason Dominguez is also going to be earning the assignment of left field, which just so happens to be the most difficult position to play at Yankee Stadium. So
he won't be there long.
Yeah, my feeling on this is if people want to know what's going to happen with the designated hitter for the Yankees, Jason Dominguez, in my mind, has his name all over it. That's my feeling on it. Is it potentially how they're going to use it? I have no idea. I don't work for the team. I'm not a scout. Okay. Just a podcaster. But if you were going to get my vote, I believe in Jason Dominguez, the bat. But as far as the glove, I don't love it. Okay. This is not about spring training, about how he looks in spring training. It's none of that. Okay. Playing the outfield in spring training is very difficult. Okay. They call it the high sky. It's tough to make reads. But if you revert back to last season when it was a normal sky at Yankee Stadium and we were there, Jake, he was not running down fly balls with any regularity. Not only was it not fun to watch, it just wasn't productive. Okay. So again, I hope this improves, but I will say designated hitter, the one player that I would designate to hit and not do anything else right now would be Jason Dominguez.
So I just scrolled through our text messages, went back to February 23rd, Sunday. That sounds like the date I was at spring training, because it was. I text you at 2:04 p.m. The game started at 1. Bro, Jason Dominguez looks miserable. He can't be our left fielder. He had just had the second. Now, it's hard to get an error. I think it actually has to hit your glove, right? Like they don't dish out errors for outfielders unless it like you drop the ball or something. He had 2 errors. I don't care what anyone says. The one where like we talked about it. Okay, yeah, you want to say the sun was in your eye. Okay. There was one where he just didn't even like play the ball. It was like he has the speed too. So I was like, what is he doing? I love Jason Dominguez. I've defended him so many times on this. We had multiple videos, multiple thumbnails, multiple titles supporting Jason Dominguez. But the least you can do is support us. You got to be able to play defense, my guy. If you want to play in the big leagues and you don't really have anything else to offer, you have to be able to play defense. So if it's not going to work out in left field, then Boone has to take an executive decision and put him in center field. And if it doesn't work out in center field, then it's not going to work out because right field ain't going to be any different. So here's the deal. Jason Dominguez can either work at left field, center field, or he's a DH for the foreseeable future, probably the rest of his career.
How old is he?
He's 20, 21.
What 21-year-old has to be a DH?
I know. Well, and I also think, to be fair, I mean, maybe he's older. He's 22.
It doesn't even matter. He could be 24. What player in the history of this game were you like, yeah, that guy is fast and he rakes? What fast player that you know of that's great? I
want to read his scouting report. Have you ever read his scouting report? I want to see.
The last time I read his scouting report, we were watching like iPhone videos. It was like in 720, you could barely see, and he was just hitting batting practice. It's like, this is great, but I mean,
okay.
Can you show me some baseball?
Well, let's see this. So we got 17-year-old Jason Dominguez. Okay. They think they had him as MLB Pipeline had him as a 55 fielding grade. So my question is, where did that go?
MLB Pipeline said that. It's just, in my opinion, it's just an indictment on the
Baseball America.
These numbers aren't like
Baseball America 40 fielding grade.
And what's that out of again? 80?
Yeah. Which, by the way, that's not one of those. Okay, yeah, he's halfway there. No. 40 is like not good. 55 hitting, 60 power, 60 runs, 60 arm. There's no reason why this guy shouldn't be a 5-tool player. No reason. There's zero.
I'm cool on the arm. Honestly, I couldn't give a rip about the arm. I really could.
The arm.
No, I know, but I'm just saying, if you can't catch fly balls and you're a 20-some-year-old prospect, where else do you want me to play you? Jason Dominguez isn't 6'2".
I don't know what's worse, the fact that Jason Dominguez can't field, or the fact that I'm looking at our text messages now, and that picture I sent you, a guy had a Ryan Pepio jersey on.
I don't know how do people feel about this. At some point or another, there's a difference between being hopeful, which I think we all exclusively are hopeful, especially if we know he's going to be a part of this roster. But I feel like at this point where we stand, I think all of us would be very surprised if Jason Dominguez wasn't on this team, say, a year from now. I think we've almost sort of created that marriage by not having traded him already. But having said that, I would say when you talk about top prospects in baseball that are outfielders, I would say they almost exclusively can catch fly balls with regularity. I don't know of very many where you can say, yeah, this guy, his main weakness as an outfielder, this superstar that we are projecting as their top prospect, that he's not catching fly balls. But again, I think he will hit in this league. I think he's going to hit incredibly well. But again, I guess my answer is that designated hitter right now is his position to lose, because left field, as I've said before, very difficult position to play at Yankee Stadium. There's a reason why Verdugo played. Okay. People were wondering, he's not hitting a lick for 2.5 months. He was there. Juan Soto was not in left field for that reason. It's a tough assignment. So I don't know. This is a huge sink or swim situation. I'm very surprised they're not protecting him and throwing him in center. I'm just shocked by that.
And also, because I know how people are going to look at this and be like, well, you guys can't be saying this, but then not give him a chance in left field. It's like, it's not that. Like, we're talking about giving guys a chance as in not trading their ass away. Okay. That's completely different than not giving them a chance to have multiple upon multiple misplays in the outfield, costing this team games. And I will say this, that date that I had, it was February 23rd is when I texted you that when I was at the game. February 26th, an article comes out from NJ.com, Randy Miller. And Jason Dominguez on his left field woes, he says, I'm working my ass off, end quote. So I do think he is trying to improve. He's like, I was reading stuff. He's getting up really early. He's going out sometimes before others, working on outfield drills and whatnot. It's not like it's a lazy factor, which tells me that in all likelihood, this is going to be figured out. I think it is. But the problem is, do I have time for that when I kind of have a limited window? I mean, Cole's out for the year. I only have Judge for how long? I'm trying to win a World Series or 2 or 3. I'm trying to win championships. So I don't know. It's one of those things, because I'm seeing what you're saying, Nate, and normally I would agree with you. It's kind of like how people overrate defense in the NBA. They underrate it at times, but they also overrate it. Like when a guy's bad, they're like, oh, anybody could score on him. I'm like, I'm sorry. my jabroni ass over here is not scoring on Nikola Jokic. Okay, I don't care.
And we don't need him to be great either.
Yeah,
I don't think this summary that we're providing you guys. I mean, first of all, we're not the only people that think Jason Dominguez has been underwhelming defensively. There's a reason that he's saying that. I'm working very hard. You say that when you know something needs to improve, which you're saying that it will. My thing is this: all he's got to do is be mediocre as can be out in left field. Just be totally mediocre. If he could be defensively mediocre and offensively you get the numbers that you want to see as out of a top prospect, out of a player who you want to be on your roster for the next 15 years, then mission accomplished. But if something is so bad, okay, defensively, where it's costing you games, it's potentially costing you series, right? It's costing you a pennant race. Yeah, at that point, now you have to say we have to make a change. But I sort of agree with our chat that they're saying, well, we got to give him an opportunity. He's not just going to be cast over to designated hitter. I would agree.
I agree.
That's why I didn't say he's going to be our DH, because there is no way that the Yankees are going to say, this is our top guy. And then all of a sudden they're just going to give up right away. Even if he's atrocious at something, they have to see if he can figure it out. So that's where my money is. He'll be in left field. Maybe we see that move to center field and Cody Bellinger, the better defensive player, who's obviously, he knows how to use his athleticism much better in the outfield. He can maybe slide over to left field and we get a solution that way.
I mean, the way I see it next year, I think they want to keep Jason in the outfield. They probably want to move him to center. They would probably want to call up Spencer Jones, have him be left fielder next year. Keep Judge in right, even though I think he should play first. Or he'll be the DH, because I think this is probably Stanton's last year. And then first base, because this is only a 1-year deal with a 37-year-old Goldschmidt. I think they could bring back Bellinger and have him be their first baseman. I could see that. So,
that's exactly what I think is happening. I think Cody Bellinger is.
You think they'll bring him back?
I 100% think he'll be back. I think we're going to love him. Obviously, this could age like a pirate's feet. But the point is, Cody Bellinger, I believe, has a incredibly high ceiling, maybe higher than what people are expecting. Because there are some people who just look at the stat sheet at the back of people's baseball card, and they don't see 45 homers, 120 RBIs. They think guys are just mediocre. I think he can be very impactful for this team. So impactful that we love his defense so much that we potentially can say, I like him to open up an outfield spot for some of those prospects that you mentioned earlier, or a Kyle Tucker who becomes available this upcoming offseason. So there are a ton of options, and obviously Vladdy Jr., another free agent. The Yankees could potentially go that direction. They wanted to bring in Vladdy Sr. all the way 20 years ago, and maybe they, right their wrong and do it now. So I don't know. And then that now allows Cody Bellinger to stay out in maybe left field. So I think Cody Bellinger, part of the reason that this pickup was so attractive for the Yankees is that there's some defensive versatility that's actually versatile. You don't have to cry every time you see him out in the field. You want him out in the field, and it doesn't matter where he plays. That is a Swiss Army knife that I think is valuable for this team. And we just have to hope. I think what makes this all go is the bat. Right? The bat of Cody Bellinger, what these guys produce, the bat of Paul Goldschmidt and what these guys produce, because it sort of answers the questions that we all need to know. So I'm excited for this. There are a ton of ways that this season can go. I think all of us are trying to figure that out. We're going to feel it out. There are going to be a lot of overreactions. We could be in first place up 6 games at the end of the first month because we still have that type of talent, but we're also missing a lot of talent, and this can go the other way. So I know everyone who's here, especially March 17th, to watch this show that's now going on 1 hour and 20, that all of us are going to be watching every game and trying to absorb it. But this is going to be an interesting one. I think 2024 was a great season for us to start this podcast. And it was obviously, we made it to the World Series for the first time in 15 years. So good timing. But when you walk into 2025, there are people who think we're just flat out going to miss the playoffs. They do. And that's totally valid. I'm not going to try and convince anyone otherwise. But there are also ways for you to view this roster as to having a higher ceiling than maybe the rest of baseball views us. So I'm excited.
I remember their projections. What was it? I love them, Baseball Reference, but I think they had them 77 wins.
Oh, I thought you were going to take Jeff Passan. I thought you were going to say in 2025.
Passan did too.
He thinks we're going to win 32 games.
5 games, I think it was.
It was in the 70s, right? Which he obviously made that judgment based on what we did the year prior. Totally valid, but at the same time, Judge hurt, right? Donaldson playing almost every day. There were so many reasons why that team was buns.
But how many times have we talked about this? The Yankees' worst season is going to be they win 80 games. They're not going to just have they're going to at least win 80, right? And
easily, yes.
The thing I find funny is that the way it's trending. You know how it's always like that one team that everybody sleeps on. The way it's trending is that the Yankees are in the favor of that because they were already kind of. And Boone talked about this. Having a chip on their shoulder because everything, like you said, it wasn't the Otanis or the Betts or anybody like that, but it was still some of the Dodgers players were just ripping us, and he's like, well, we did make the World Series. I know things didn't go the way we wanted, but they can't take that away from us that we won the AL, and so he's been saying he's like, yeah, the guys have a chip on their shoulder. He's like, they absolutely have the right to talk however they want because they won it all. But he's like, don't think that we're not going to go in and play for that and play with that in mind. And now you factor that in, but you also factor in the fact like MLB.com just dropped their division winner projections. They have the Orioles, and then they have wild card teams of the Red Sox and Blue Jays. And they say that consider me in full on Yankees panic mode. I think if something happens to Aaron Judge like it did in 2023, they might finish in last. Either way, okay. So, I mean, we could play ifs all we want, right? I'm not going to sit here and say...
Who says that? If LeBron James was 5'5", he wouldn't be in the NBA. No, who makes these lists?
It was MLB.com is all I know. But my point...
There's no reason to do it.
Do you see what I'm saying, though? My point is I'm already seeing it. People are sleeping on the Yankees, and they're going to regret it. I'm telling you. If you're doubting the Yankees can win this AL that no one seems to want to get better except for the Red Sox. I mean, it blows my mind. How on earth? Where did what's his face? Where did the Brewers pitcher that went to the Orioles? Where did he go? I totally forgot his name.
Well, as did I. But I mean, I'm not going to read it because for future sponsorships.
Yeah,
but. How can you possibly watch the 74 and 88 Toronto Blue Jays?
Wait, hold on. Stanton is my Pookie now?
Yes. Never disappears. So you watch the 74 win Toronto Blue Jays where Bo Bichette essentially went from a perennial all-star to just having a dud of a season. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is being offered $250 million less than what he wants, and he's disgruntled and not happy about it at all. It's essentially the organization saying you're not that guy. And they didn't really get that much better. They really didn't. Santander, not that much better. They're just not. They may win. This is at best. They may be a 500 ball club. I would say it would be bold, but I would say it's reasonable that Toronto finishes past Tampa, goes above 500, wins maybe 83 games. I would say that's fair. Okay. A 9-win swing. Bo Bichette plays better. But to sit up here and say, well, yeah, if Aaron Judge gets hurt and obviously Stanton is hurt and then Max Fried maybe goes down, right? Cole's not there. They would win this amount of games. There's no reason to throw those type of hypotheticals on any team. If Shohei Ohtani doesn't play, yeah, the Dodgers probably aren't right as good as they potentially would be. They now are way more susceptible of losing. I think everybody knows this. This is common sense. I don't understand this. If you're going to tell me what this organization is going to do, or any organization, just determine if everything was even and all the players were on the field, what do you think would happen? Isn't that what we should be doing here? And obviously it seems like reporters their job is to just like write what they want to say rather than what is practical.
Yeah. And by the way, I was butchering that. He didn't go to the Giants. He went to the Diamondbacks. Corbin Burns.
Oh, Corbin Burns. Yeah. They suddenly
that
are going to win after losing that.
Nobody in the AL got him. Like, it blows my mind that people act like the AL is like how it used to be. Like, the Yankees are so clearly the best team in the AL. They're the most complete team. There are teams that are interesting. The Guardians are interesting. The Red Sox, like I mentioned, the Astros. But like, I don't know, man. It's weird. This team is built like 2000, designed to have 3 5 WAR players. Average Judge at 8. 2 starters. If we get the same 87 wins, should be okay. See, I think they win more than 90 games.
The 2025 Yankees are going to win more than 90 games. I'm going to say,
I'd say 90 or more is what I'll say. They get to 90.
Okay. My prediction for this Yankees team is they're going to play a lot like that team you saw with with Frazier at third base, Todd Frazier.
Oh,
I'm envisioning that roster, and obviously different players. No two teams are the exact same. But the energy of that team was almost like, if we don't win the World Series, it's not the end of the world. I don't think Yankees fans are looking at this roster. I know you're higher on this roster, but I don't think we're looking at it. I think the narrative is that we lost Juan Soto and we're kind of getting up off the mat. And then what happens next, right? To prove that Juan Soto made the wrong decision, to prove that we're still a great organization. And I think this team, if I had to make a prediction for you, Jake, I'm seeing 88 to 89 wins, right? Injuries are still a factor. The ones that have already occurred, those are set in stone. I'm going to go 88 to 89 wins. I'll go 89 to be safe there. And I'm going to say that this team is still going to hold its own in October. I do. I think Fried is still big time. I think Rodon, I know a lot of people have written him off. He's still up or down. I think he can be up in October. Right. And I just think right now, I wouldn't put my money on the Yankees to win the World Series. I don't love this roster. But as far as I'm concerned, Baltimore didn't get better. Okay. I think a lot of the reason why some people want to make those predictions is that they think, okay, well, a Holiday is going to make a step forward. Obviously, he's going to give us more in 2025 than he did last year. Right. He was a little underwhelming coming onto the scene. We get that. But to predict that you're going to lose your ace, a guy who gave you 200 some innings, and then you're just going to go from a 91 win team to just blowing us out the water in the AL East, I don't get that.
I don't
understand it.
Can I read off their roster right now? I got their lineup here. Gunnar Henderson, obviously all-star talent, great. Jordan Westberg's a good player. Adley Rutschman's a really, really good player. Colton Cowser, was up there for MVP, or not MVP, Rookie of the Year. Tyler O'Neill, I actually really like that pickup. Sneaky good. Ryan O'Hearn's a good player. Ryan Mountcastle's a good player. Jackson Holiday has a chance to be a star. We'll see if it happens. And Cedric Mullins has passed his prime and has pretty much lost everything that he used to have. Not a bad lineup. I still like Ceddy Mullins, but I'm just saying. Not a bad lineup, but at the same time, like it's balanced, but it's not making me go, oh man, the Yankees are in trouble. Because then you look at their rotation, and I'm sorry, man. First off, Grayson Rodriguez is going to start the season on the IL, right?
Okay.
So that's huge. Then their rotation right now without Grayson is going to be Zach Eflin is their ace. Charlie Morton is their number 2. I'm pretty sure he's like old. But anyway, Dean Kramer is their third. Tomoyuki Sugano is their 4th. And Cade Povich is their 5th. Do you see my point? I'm not looking
I miss watching you pronounce names.
I know you do. So here's my point here. The media has some like obsession with the Orioles. They have since they got good. I don't know. But I look at the Orioles and I'm like, They are the example of a team that easily could have just run roughshod of the AL, and they piss it away because they're stuck in their own ways. They're set in their own ways. They didn't bring back Corbin Burns. All you had to do was pay Corbin Burns. They didn't want to pay him. They didn't bring him back. They didn't get anybody huge. Like I said, Tyler O'Neill's a sneaky signing. If Tyler O'Neill is the only thing you did in your offseason while losing Corbin Burns, that's a net negative. So they're not as good as they were last year, right? You could argue that some of those players will get better because they're young, but they're not as good. Like I mentioned, Boston, I like Boston. I think they have a good roster. I don't think it's better than the Yankees, but I could see them being competitive. Here's the Rays. Mind you, they'll be playing at George Steinbrenner Field, so that should be fun. Which, by the way, that's kind of interesting because they're going to be playing. I know it's wild. They're going to be playing with the same dimensions as Yankee Stadium. Isn't that crazy?
I wonder how many posts there are going to be on Twitter or X or whatever you guys want to call it.
Softball.
That they're playing a softball field, or are they going to talk about the stats just being what they are? You know what? I actually think Baltimore, what they're going for is really, let's hang around. No, not even that. I think that they're just going to say, well, let's hang around the trade deadline. And then we think, obviously, if Holiday works out, we maybe can be on the trade market and go a step higher, where our ceiling potentially could be higher after the deadline than the Yankees, right? And that's true. Fluid. Like, that's a fluid situation. The Yankees are considered, obviously, according to the articles, they're a volatile organization, right? They have a 32-year-old, right? 32-year-old star in Aaron Judge, their best player. They just lost Juan Soto, so they're not going to be this two-headed, right? This isn't going to be Jordan Pippen anymore. This is just going to be Jordan. And then now you have to figure out, okay, well, if they have a big injury, kind of what you saw out of that Donaldson season where they win 82, 83 games. Well, now these organizations like the Red Sox and the Orioles can say, okay, well, we don't even have to make a trade and we're still going to go where we need to go. So I think that's what some of these teams are doing. Do I love it? No. I think if you're a fan of these teams, it should piss you off that you see your best arm in your organization, they just let it go and don't even really consider bringing them back. I don't get that. But if you're a Red Sox fan, you should be excited right now. I think this is an opportunity for the Red Sox to stand on the heels of the Yankees and apply pressure. And at some point or another, I believe wholeheartedly the Red Sox are going to be right behind us or even ahead of us at one point. And the Yankees it's going to be put up or shut up time if you're going to maintain being this organization that lives up top of this division.
I agree. I'm looking at the Rays. I think their pitching is going to be really good. I think they got some solid, they got a solid lineup, and I think there will be a benefit to playing with those dimensions. I'm not going to sit here and lie to people like playing at Yankee Stadium. I think it does help to a degree. Now it also, the other team is also playing there, so it's not like, but when you're constantly playing there as opposed to playing at a pitcher's park, I think it does help as far as the offense.
We should hit bombs. They at least should be hitting bombs this year.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think the Rays getting that benefit could help them. Ha-Seong Kim had to have right shoulder surgery, so he's going to start the season on IL. But I like the rotation. I mean, Shane McClanahan, Drew Rasmussen, Ryan Pepio. I know he's a meme, but he's still a good, he's a good pitcher. Shane Baz, if he stays healthy, right? And then you have Taj Bradley, who I think is really underrated. So I think really the team that's going to finish last, it's the Blue Jays. I don't love what the Blue Jays did. I mean, first off, Max Scherzer being in your 5, you're relying on a 40-year-old, and he's been injured. I don't love that. Jimenez was a good pickup. I'm not going to say it wasn't. Will Wagner, Ernie Clement, Alejandro Kirk, and Dalton Varsho. I just don't think they have. I also think Bo Bichette might be the most overrated player in the history of the sport. I mean, like the way people talk about this guy, you would think he's hitting 340 every year. But no, I mean, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Santander, and Springer. Those will be the guys that hit, obviously Varsho can hit home runs as well. But I just don't really look at this Blue Jays team as anything more than just kind of a bottom feeder in this division. So,
oh yeah, they're not atrocious, but the division's pretty solid. They're just someone's got to finish last. I think it's them.
It is solid. Someone has to finish last, but while it's solid, I don't think anybody's better than the Yankees. I think the argument would be the Orioles if they actually cared about their pitching. They didn't, and so that's why we're here. With that said, though, you made a comment I agreed with, and I also wanted to jump back. I do get if you're talking about the Orioles going that direction, that does make sense for a reason. I did mention multiple times that I felt like there was more in the trade market for the Yankees than there were in this really mid, like average free agency. It was Juan Soto, it was Corbin Burns, Max Fried, some other guys, and a bunch of mid. And that's just what it was. And so I don't think the Yankees wanted to dive into that. It's why they traded for Bellinger. It's why they, traded for, some of these guys. And I just feel like with the Orioles, if they're going that route, I can accept that. Like if they're planning on making a big deadline push, right? Or they're going to make a big splash in the trade market, then rescind my original statement about them. But if they don't, that just tells me that they're just trying to do their thing, stick to their formula. But I'm not going to sit here and lie to people. I mean, it was a very mid free agency class. And because Juan Soto was in it and the money was crazy, it shot everyone else's value up. And so you had a lot of these mid players getting paid a lot of really good money. So that's really what happened there. But the thing about the Yankees, it's really simple. They're not going to have to win games 9-8. I think with this bullpen, I think with the starting pitching is better than most people think. They have arguably the best starting pitching in the division. And it's, not anywhere near 100% healthy because they lost Cole. So I just think, and then you have the bullpen. And I mean, you were in on it early on. We'd actually mentioned him, William, or what the hell? Why can I not remember the guy's name? The closer they just got. Devin Williams. There we go.
Yeah.
I don't know why I almost called him Duran.
No, you were
Williams.
on it. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Devin Williams. And I think the gist of it is last year, Jack Curry covered it with saying that the Yankees struggled missing bats out of their bullpen. Yeah. Devin Williams isn't going to struggle. Okay. It's the whole reason he came up with this pitch, the changeup,
the airbender,
the airbender. It is sensational. Man on third, less than 2 outs. He's the type of guy. It's not just about getting outs. It's how you go about getting the out. And when you miss bats, I know people hate the whole strikeout and can he strike a guy out or will he strike out or hit a homer? A lot of people hate that mentality, but there is some value to it, especially late in games. It's huge. So yeah, Devin Williams is big time for this team. It's someone we should rely on. And it also is incredibly smart. I never thought that they would do this first and foremost, but I really thought the Yankees would see what Weaver did last year and say, okay, we've got our guy, and then sort of go in half-baked behind Weaver. And then he has to repeat exactly what he did in 2024 towards the end in order to accomplish what we accomplished. But the Yankees making this decision, especially now in hindsight, having seen these injuries, it worked out in the best way possible for us because without the Fried pickup, without a move to find a definitive closer, someone who has a pedigree. I love. We're right back in 2025 talking about pedigree.
Your favorite word?
The Yankees, in theory, you shouldn't have a problem with who they're tossing the ball to when it matters. Now, they can still blow the game, but you're not going to be seeing a name where you're saying, oh, they're warming this guy up. The Yankees have sort of built a roster where they're going to be able to take their pick and create matchups that are favorable. And that helps you win games. It's worked with this organization in years past, and now they're doing it again. And you've mentioned it. Yeah, we're not going to win 9-8 anymore. We might do it once or twice every couple months, but we're going to be playing a more fundamental brand of baseball. It's not your dad's Yankees, your grandpa's Yankees. It's not any of that. it's a different brand. I mean, these guys have
No, of
beards
course
for
not.
Christ's sake.
Yeah, facial
It's
hair.
different. Yeah, this thing is different. So I'm looking forward to this. It can go one of two ways. Obviously, that's just life. But this season, I would admit, it is very volatile, which is why there's so many writers who are rooting for us to just be dookie. And I'm not sure why, because it makes them quite a bit of money when we're good, right? So, and by the way, I will take the responsibility of doing the movie.
Oh, cool.
Because
I don't remember who did it last. And I don't care to remember who did it last.
Yeah. But did we have anything else that we wanted to touch on? Because I wasn't sure.
No, I think we hit on literally everything I wanted to touch on. I mean, the bullpen, the facial hair, obviously the big one, Will Warren, Ben Rice. Yeah, I mean, I think we hit on everything.
Fantastic. So I'm going to go with the movie Moneyball. And the reason for this is because I want people to realize the Yankees right now, as far as who's on the field, and some of the people say, well, why didn't we go this direction and make this team better? Objectively, this player would have made us better. And the Yankees sort of went in a different direction. And now you're just going to see young players jogging out onto the field. Well, a lot of the reason the Yankees didn't make the moves that they made, they were trying to trade a Stroman, right? We wanted to get rid of that $18.5 million that's allocated to him so that we now behind him could reallocate those funds somewhere else to improve this team. We are, in a way, I know I'm still a much more expensive version of it, but we are Moneyball. We are an expensive Moneyball. So if you are still hanging out here with us, this is the first episode of 2025. It is going to be the first of many. Our plan is to go live every single day after every game. And there will also be videos in between, depending on actually having a topic worth talking about. We're not going to milk this thing. We're just going to, and interviews. Exactly. So we've got some great interviews, especially as the season's going to start. We are looking forward to announcing that. And if you guys haven't yet, make sure you guys subscribe. But if you're new here, make sure you put Moneyball in the comment section, because it'll let us know that you were here in the trenches after almost 2 hours. What are you doing with this thumbs up?
This is just a reminder that you should hit the thumbs up button, because it's just sitting there and it costs $0.00 to hit it. So
does the thumbs up actually do something on YouTube? Or
it does. So what the thumbs up button does, and this will actually get people to click on it, I think, if you enjoyed this, but you don't hit the thumbs up button, YouTube has to assume that you watched it all the way to the end to hate watch. So they're not going to recommend it. Your stuff doesn't get recommended unless it gets that thumbs up.
Interesting, because I'm such a non-reactive watcher.
Oh, you're the worst.
I just watch YouTube video. I don't know if I've liked a video on YouTube since
you're a psychopath.
Like 15 years ago. I just haven't. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but I just don't think about it. But please do think about it, guys. It does help our channel. It doesn't cost anything, obviously, but we really
literally just admitted he never uses the like button, and this is the guy who's always like, and like this video.
I've never thought about it. And I definitely don't subscribe to channels. And then I'll watch a video and be like, that guy really made a high quality video. And then I'll never see it again until months later.
See, for me, I was just watching on the TV, and we were watching, my roommate and I were watching Drew Gooden, who I think is a great YouTuber. And it was like afterwards, I realized, I was like, oh crap. He's like, what? I was like, I restarted the video. He's like, what are you doing? It was like, I didn't like it. I went back and I liked it.
Oh my God.
I am that person, because, hey, the creator makes it. You gotta show him some love, Not
You've
that
been a creator longer than I have. So you get it. Yeah, you get it. But please make sure you guys like and subscribe. Helps us out a ton. We're going to be seeing you guys every day. So,
that goes with people on YouTube, by the way. Or not YouTube, Twitter. If you're on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, be sure to come on over to YouTube. It'll take 2 seconds. It is Yankees Unloaded, and hit the subscribe button, because there's some content that will be exclusive to YouTube that won't always be on Twitter. So those videos, for instance. So be sure to check it out. Be sure to follow me at JK Bogan. Follow Gary at Gary Sheffield Jr. And we'll see you guys in the next episode.
And this video.
Real quick.
And we appreciate you, Danny.
Oh, Bart Simpson took it.
What is going on here at the end of the
show? Danny, thank you for the 2. We appreciate that. And I hit that by accident. I didn't want to.
Bart Simpson says, Gary, I wish your dad was able to rock the beard with the Yankees back in the day. I think society also wishes that, where everyone didn't have to look like a freaking pilot playing for the Yankees. But yeah, we agree, Bart.
Air Force pilot.
Yeah, it didn't work.
All right. Well,
But
anyway.
like the video.
Yeah, on this note, you guys take care. We'll see you soon.